Alright guys, so welcome back to another Patreon request, and as always, if you guys like to have a Patreon request done, just hit the link below, head on over to my Patreon, you guys can start sending me requests for videos to do here on YouTube. But other than that, let's get started with this video. And this first one comes from... fucking fly. This first one comes from my good friend Chris, aka the Mount Vernon Kid. And Chris, thank you once again for your continued patronage and the Patreon request. And this Patreon request is going to be interesting because this one kind of made me think. Like, this one I thought would be pretty fun to do. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what would Amanda Waller think of Captain America? Now, when we say Captain America, he didn't specify as to Steve or Sam, because they are both Captain America. So, I think for just for argument's sake, let's say Steve. Like, so yeah. So what would it be like? What would Amanda Waller think of Steve Rogers, and what in turn would Steve Rogers think of Amanda Waller? Honestly, real quick, I do think Amanda Waller would probably work definitely in the Marvel Universe, especially on the Captain America side. I think she'd be a great, and not like a villain, but like someone like a Henry Gyrick that Steve, or in some cases Sam, would have to run into at times. Like she would be like an obstacle in the government to oppose Steve and or Sam. But anyway. So what would Waller think of Steve Rogers? I think she'd honestly think you are the most naive fucker I have ever met in my life. I think she would legit just have a lot of contempt for Steve. There would just be this level of, I don't like you. I don't like what you think you stand for, because what you think you stand for doesn't exist. You are just a walking flag. Like, that's how I think she would just take Steve, as just you are nothing more than a walking flag post, and you really do think that the government's here to work for the people. You sad little blue-eyed blonde Aryan child, you are so dumb. I think that I think Waller would just have this level of just contempt for Steve Rogers, because I feel like she would try to get Steve in line for her. If she was in the Marvel Universe, and if she was in the government, she would be trying constantly to get Steve in what would probably be her version of the of the Suicide Squad, the Thunderbolts, and she would definitely going out, because here's the thing, Waller can be such a really petty bitch that I feel like she would just be constantly trying to undermine Steve, whether it be through actions or something else. I do feel like she would just be constantly trying to undermine Steve, no matter what, through legal jargon, and it would just constantly get under his... she would go out of her way, even at the damage of her own credit, because Steve would just be there to, be telling other people who would actually listen to him, hey, this is how I'd like to do things. And yeah, a lot of the times, a lot of government officials oh, it's Captain America, I guess I'll listen to what he has to say. Meanwhile, Amanda would just be stewing in her own shittiness. Yeah, until Steve learns to play ball for me, I'm just going to continue to be just absolutely awful to him, no matter what. On the other side, I think Steve would definitely just have no love for Waller. Steve would have... I have no doubt that he would not be a fan of Amanda Waller in any way, shape, or form. Waller, he would see her as, the wicked underside of the government. I think he would see her as, just this cruel, vindictive woman who has... the only interest in America that she has is her own interests, and her own little power plays, and he'd be like, you are the embodiment of everything wrong with the government. You are literally the... And the worst thing is that Steve would still be Steve would still try to help her see the error of her ways, and also, I really do feel like Steve and Waller would have a lot of theological clashes about the American dream. because Steve and Waller had vastly different backgrounds. So I feel like the two of them, like just them sitting in a room and Waller just kind of talking about like, you know, Steve, like, I want you to understand that America is the boogeyman to the world, and I am the leash to that boogeyman. And Rogers would just be like, I know, I'm not an idiot, and I'm not as naive as you think I am, but I still always have faith in the dream and its people. And she would just be like, the people work for us. It's not the other way around. And he's like, that's where you like, that's the talk of like, you know, I fought someone who had that kind of thought, that mindset too. It didn't work out for him. And I don't think it'll work out for you either. So, yeah. Bottom line, these two would just be just hate each other, just the most adamant vitriol hate you will ever see for any character. But anyway, so you guys tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think it would be like if what would Amanda Waller think of Captain America and vice versa? Once again, I'd like to thank Chris for sending me this request, and like I said before, if you guys would like to send me your own Patreon request, just hit the link below, head on over to my Patreon, where you guys can send me requests for videos to do here on YouTube, and also check out the exclusive content over there on there as well. But other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in Multiverse.